Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier. Welcome to another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today, we are going to be learning about, we're going to be hearing a brief synopsis of Uranus and its symbol. In this video, I'm particularly wanting to talk about the symbol of Uranus, the two crescent moons, the cross in the middle, and the sphere of spirit underneath. I get the bulk of it from a book by a lady named Isabel Hickey, Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabel M Hickey. The bulk of the symbolism comes from this book. She is a Western intuitive who's really... Jimmy Page was the one who introduced me, not personally, but in a book he wrote. He says that this girl's book really got him started, and I read the book myself, and it's what got me started on astrology. And it's one of the only books that I've seen really talk in an intelligent way about the symbolism of Uranus, and we're going to talk about it. Eventually, I would like to talk a lot about what is it that qualifies and quantifies Uranus in the chart. But this video is specifically just talking about the symbolism. So keep an eye out for when I do an outer planets discussion of the outer planets as they relate to Tropical Vedic Astrology. As we can see in this little part here, I'm a Tropical Vedic astrologer. I pride myself in that, and that is the conception that I'm trying to blend here. Vedic astrology and how to deal with the outer planets through it. So keep an eye out for my outer planets videos if you are a tropical astrologer and if you are a Vedic astrologer trying to blend these things together. So it's a pleasure. Welcome. Before we get started on, I've got a few slides and stuff that I'm going to go through where we're going to essentially talk about what Isabel Hickey describes through the symbolism of Uranus. First thing I want to do is get a little brief synopsis of Uranus, particularly as it relates to Mercury, interestingly, because she describes Uranus as a higher octave of Mercury. Now, there are things that Isabel Hickey says that I don't necessarily... She uses a lot of interesting intuitive things to describe the detriment of Uranus and its exaltation. I'd rather not even mention it because I don't necessarily... When it comes to something like Uranus, there's lots of things spoken about it. I like to speak to the general qualities that we can all observe in Uranus. When it comes to saying that Uranus is like exalted in Scorpio or like the 8th house, or it's in detriment in Taurus or any of these sorts of things, it's kind of a hearsay thing for me. And just because many people have intuited as such doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. But the associations of Uranus with any sign, with Aquarius even, is up to debate so far as I'm concerned. Although I will talk about how there is a certain wrap-up of Saturn and Uranus. We're going to talk about it, we're going to discuss it, and I'm always going to say use skepticism here because we are new astrologers in today's time trying to weed out unnecessary inferences and associations with these planets. I think that the outer planets are their own chakra energy body that is detached from the other 7 luminaries. They're their own thing, their own vibration. So, let's read just a quick little synopsis of what Isabel Hickey says about Uranus. On page 50 of her book, Astrology, a Cosmic Science, Isabel Hickey says, Uranus and Neptune are higher octave planets, and their powers are aligned to Mercury for Uranus and Venus for Neptune, respectively. Mercury is intellect, and Uranus is intuition. There are so many things that make intuition. There's so many things that make intellect. So it's hard to distinctly... she's using these terms to make the contrast and to describe Uranus. in a time in the 60s when it had just been discovered. So let's give space for what she's trying to say here. Let's not be too black and white about her word choice. I find this interesting. Uranus works with the rapidity of lightning, and our intuitive processes work just that quickly as well. The intellect of Mercury has been compared to a farmer, plodding along at 10 miles per hour, and the intuition has been compared to a high-powered car, passing the farmer at 60 miles an hour. There's something important about both of these you have to understand. The intellectual, the Mercury, finds it difficult to understand the intuitive Uranus person. Mercury, the intellectual, finds the intuitive person frustrating. The intuitive has reached his or her goal, but do not ask them how they got there or how they reached that goal, because they do not know. The logic and reason of the intellectual individual concerns the intuitive not at all. The intellectual processes of the intuitive doesn't concern them. It's amazing when you combine these two, by the way, in a person who's very Mercury-oriented, but who has a Uranus placed somewhere, especially somewhere dealing with research, because they will meticulously, first they'll drop the science and go towards the intuition, but then the scientist will sober up and say, what the hell did I just, how do I prove what I just experienced, right? What I just intuited. The logic and reason of the intellectual does not concern the intuitive person. They know, and they know that they know. Mercury, the intellect, knows why they know. And that's why they're both important. That was my little first start to the start of this video. They're both important. Mercury as an instrument of understanding, and Uranus is an instrument of understanding. When it comes to whatever field they're disposed towards, each one can have different types of knowing, depending on the house Mercury is in and the sign Mercury is in. It can tend towards a certain way of knowing things. Uranus, wherever it is, it also tends to a certain way of knowing, of intuiting, of the house that it's in. You know, how it intuits very deeply and insightfully, and when it comes to transits, it's a different thing. It experiences painful opening and closing of experiences that are traumatic sometimes, but also inspirational in other times, breaking up the previous worldview of whatever house and sign and house lord that it involves itself with. As we learn later in our, as I connect this all to Vedic astrology, we're going to find that the house, the sign, and the lord of the sign are all deeply integrated into how Uranus expresses itself in the chart and in our experience, just like with any other planet. That is for videos that we're going to be digesting soon. First thing, like that particular thing, if you've got Uranus in Capricorn, and it's in this, I'm a Leo rising. I have Uranus in Capricorn. It's in my 6th house. Saturn carries the energy of Uranus. And wherever Saturn is in my chart, it's going to reflect this Uranian energy. If my Uranus Lord is in the 7th house or in the 10th house, in an angular house, there's going to be more activity with regards to Saturn, because Saturn is my Uranus Lord. And there will be more activity regarding Saturn and Uranus together in the house that's implied. Because it's an angular house, that's what I mean. But I digress. We're going to get there, folks. For now, let's talk in brief, quote unquote, hopefully I can make this video brief, strictly about the symbol that Uranus represents, because there's a lot of things that are hard to discerningly define in regards to what we can truly know about Uranus as it relates to a chart. as it relates as a chakra bearer, as a graha, as a grasper of karma. It's hard to know what exactly it implies because there's no scripture for it. There's no Vedic astrology text that talks about Uranus because they couldn't be seen by the naked eye, and the sages never talked about it, although they did talk about certain cycles that turned with Uranian zaniness. I digress. This is the reason why I specifically in this video am going to refer to Isabel Hickey's description of what the symbol of Uranus means, because we have intuited that symbol through lots of it's intuition that kind of got us these symbols, but the symbols go very deep, and that's what don't take my word for it. See for yourself, and let's consider for ourselves what this symbol might mean and what secret, intuitive, esoteric knowledge the symbol holds for us. Now I'd like to start off again by showing a juxtaposition between Mercury and Uranus. Notice that they're made up of the same essential symbols. Mercury's got a crescent at the top. It's got a black circle in the middle, and the cross of matter is at the bottom. It's on the ground. It's on the surface of the mind. The cross of matter is material reality, north, south, east, west. The angles, the manifest reality. So the cross of matter, the earth, is at the bottom of the symbol of Mercury, in the same way that it is for Venus, right? Venus is a very earthy, gross matter planet. It's about sex. It's about love, and when it's exalted, it's about using the material gate for higher expressions of spirit. Venus is particularly how spirit on the top comes down through Earth. That's the cross of matter. Essentially, that's what this whole page here is talking about. You can feel free to pause this page to just get the symbolism. Again, it comes from this book, Isabel M Hickey, Astrology, a Cosmic Science. Now, Mercury is basically Venus with the crescent moon on top, right? So there's something that's happening here between the cross of matter, the reality on the ground, the spirit which is trying to transmit itself and its truth through the cross of matter, through physical reality. And Mercury specifically relates to the personality. The personality being the moon, the crescent moon on top, the duality, the changing of our lives. And the moon here at the top is kind of behind this whole thing. It sees the spirit, it sees the opportunities in front of it, but the cross of matter is on the surface of the mind. This is what we have to understand about the symbol of Mercury, is that there is a focus on material reality and a constant growth. That's part of what the moon figure, the crescent moon at the top, represents. It's growth through material reality, and it's a consistent sense of growth. Mercury does reflect the earth Panchatattva. So it deals with intellect. It manages what's on the ground to the best of the knowledge of the sun. The sun and even the personality are seen as secondary to the intelligence, the balance of resources, the management of one's progressing finances, resources, and constant activity, habitual activity. The cross of matter being on the ground, it balances inspiration from the sun and moon with realistic, linear, progressive growth. Not necessarily progressive, but definitely looking to sustain a linear sense of growth. It communicates. The cross of matter being on the ground shows that Mercury is interested in communicating about what's right in front of it on Earth. And between its friends, it sees the things of Earth as through fairness. The spirit, the ego, the sun is like secondary to what's right on the ground and what's fair for Mercury. And it sees through what's fair and tries to understand things through laws, through words, through symbols, through language. And it shows our past life comprehension of what we've understood, how we've understood things intellectually in the past. That's what we know of Mercury. Can you guys see what I'm looking at here? Let me just check. Good, sweet. Uranus uses the same symbols, but notice the key difference is that now the cross of matter is seen as secondary. The cross of matter is being sandwiched between the intuition of what's going to grow the personality. It's that crescent moon. The crescent moon is the moon. It relates to the growth of the personality, and it's kind of squashing the cross of matter. This little T, the green T in Uranus, is material reality. Material reality is being put under the pressure of our emotions, of our intuition of the moon, and what our intuition and how it relates to our spirit. Because as we can see, Uranus is a spirit-driven planet. The inspiration, the spirit, the circle, the sun. The circle represents the sun. You'll notice in my other things here that I actually put for Mercury and for Uranus, the circle represents the symbol of the sun, Surya. So Uranus painfully compels us to look past our rational linear limits of thought. The cross of matter is the playground sort of for the spiritual intuition that's going on with Uranus here. It's an insight into our own soul's limitations. It sees and yearns to be obliterated from these limitations. And it's like a disgustingly incisive, painful impulse to see beyond limitations, and then to wish that those limitations weren't there, and to try to express them. How it expresses them. It's always destructive in a certain way, but destructive is sometimes constructive, actually. Because you can have, if Uranus is placed the right way, you might look forward to have your reality destroying in order that you can create it again. It's like, a breath of fresh air. My life's been completely rearranged and changed, and all the karmas that I had back there have been let go. When you have a well-placed Uranus, and the Lord, the Uranus Lord, the planet that rules the sign Uranus is in, if that planet is in a good place, by Shadbala, by all the things that we know of in Vedic astrology, if that planet is well-placed and strong, then it will have the capacity to deal with this Uranian constant dissolving and rebuilding and dissolving that we know of Uranus. The main thing to get from this is that spirit, inspiration, the constant turning of karma towards what's best, is on the ground. It's on the surface of the mind. There's an evolutionary appetite here. And someone who has a strong Uranus in their chart is looking to look past the cross of matter, looking to look past Mercury in a lot of ways. Even Venus. Uranus can look past Venus, past the need for love, past the need for logical, slow, compassionate self-love, and say, screw all that. What is my sun trying to do? The sun, the spirit. So it's almost like a solar-driven planet. It's a real adjunct to the sun, this planet, in a lot of ways. It shows past life gestation. It shows gestation meaning squashing, crystallizing, showing where a residue has been built up from our past lives towards the house it's in, and also that wherever it's transiting by transit, right? I showed this just to get a sense of what Venus is all about. This little bit here about our planetary glyphs, they transcend language. That's why I'm doing this symbolism bit. Now, we don't need to go too much here about Mercury, but if you'd like to pause the video, feel free to do that. Again, let me just check a if you guys can see what I'm looking at. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Essentially, the circle of spirit for Mercury now. Again, we're talking about Mercury. The cross of matter is on the ground. The Atma is expressing itself through Mercury, but this particular planet, this particular glyph says that the surface of reality, the cross of matter, the nervous system, sensory communication, language, laws, rules that we agree between each other, the fairness of our day and age, the laws of our day and age that have been communicated, the marketplace, the natural marketplace of what's all around us. No matter how much our spirit, our soul, wants to blend eternally through all realities, it has to function with a logical, rational rhythm and in cadence with the opportunity and the reality of the world that you're in today. The timeless sun needs time-bound, mercurial residues of material that's right in front of it in order to express itself rationally and logically with the reality that it's in. I've talked about Uranus and Mercury. Let me get to Uranus when I say what I'm going to say. With Mercury, the cross of matter is on the surface. And this is what this planet is for. It's the person who thinks about the surface and these time-bound, context-specific knowledge. That's what Mercury is. It's context-specific. It's like the business-savvy person who's talking with a possible market partner. And it's like a game. Marketing is like a game for Mercury. Because that's what's on the nature of material reality on the surface. That's how this person thinks. That's how, wherever Mercury is placed for us, we think in a way of that's fitted to the context of whatever we're dealing with. You know, if a merchant is talking to another merchant, and I know that you have 100 apples, and you are like not short on, you have 1,000 apples, and you're not short on apples at all. And I come up to you, and I say, look, I have like bananas, and I am not short on bananas at all. But I need apples. And I know you that have like 1,000 apples. I also know that you're short on bananas. I have bananas, and you need bananas. I need apples, and you have so many apples. How about you just give me a big bunch of apples, and I'll give you a big bunch of bananas. And, you know, this is the Mercury consciousness. It can put pressure on a moment's. It's a stockbroker consciousness, etc. So Mercury is the spirit is sandwiched between the reality, the cross, and our personality, which is what we can realistically express through our memory, our crescent moon. You know, like the moon and Mercury, in a lot of ways, have to work together because you can only express, like you can see the reality that you're in, and you can talk about it, but it's the moon that has the personality, which is the vibe and tone and tune that picks up on what Mercury sees. Mercury is a certain way of linguifying, putting language to what the moon experiences. You can have two people with Mercury in the same place, and they speak the same vibrational language. You know, I've got Mercury in Sagittarius. It's very intuitive sometimes. It's very jumpy and instinctive and insightful in a lot of ways, although sometimes it's just silly and scattered. And I can talk that language with someone else who also has Mercury in Sagittarius. But when the moon is in different places, that's when the whole content of what's being said is different. And so the personality is a part of the expression of Mercury, as opposed to Venus. Venus is without that sense of memory, of karma. Venus is just more about like how we react to things. So I digress. Mercury manages the spiritual impulse and says sometimes ambition, the sun, stunts our realistic, linear, patient, consistent growth. That's Earth Panchatattva. That's what we're trying to say with Mercury here, is that it tells the sun, sometimes you're too much. You have all this ambition, and it's good, and the sun has to express through Mercury. But the ambitions of the sun sometimes are not realistic, especially when the sun is expressing through Uranus. Because again, Uranus is a key part of the sun's expression, and the sun's climbing, progressing. Also relates with why I believe lots of people have considered Uranus to be in cahoots with Saturn, and that it rules Aquarius. I wouldn't say that it rules Aquarius per se, but it's possible that it is tied in with Aquarius and with Saturn, because Saturn is a progressive planet. Saturn is what pressures us in life to have to not just sustain ourselves, but also be moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other and developing on what we are. So Uranus is a deep part of the expression of Saturn in this way. Mercury, this is, again, we've just been talking about how Mercury is this linear intellect that relates to the thinking of Uranus. Uranus is our intuition of what the sun wants. Mercury is our intellectual understanding of where we've been and where we're going. And Saturn is the actual preservation of the energy field, the pressure to move forward with not only our understanding, but with our lives, with our energy field, and with what Uranus wants. Now, we have this here. Again, I keep just wanting to make sure. We have this here. Again, we don't have to go through all of this, but essentially we can see now, like I've said, that the sphere of spirit is now on the surface of the mind when it comes to Uranus. And Uranus there's an instinct to move in ecstatic capacities. It's just this energy, especially when in transit, but also when it's like in an angle, or when the Uranus Lord is in an angle in the chart. The planet that relates with Uranus, the planet that rules the sign Uranus is in, or anything that's conjunct Uranus, especially if it's in an angular house, it is going to have this transformative capacity. It's going to bring on, it's painful to deal with usually, sometimes super crazy painful. It just tears everything that we thought we knew about things, or it makes things very boring. Remember, there's a gestation that happens with anything related to Uranus. We have to really dig what that means. Gestation, crystallization. Uranus means that whatever it relates with has been so much of the same thing for so long that it now has an explosive. It's like squeezing an ink tube and making a Rorschach blot test, where you just squeeze this thing and it goes, and the way it comes out reflects on us, reflects on our personality, what we want, what our sun wants. For better or worse, like it's kind of just like a high chakra part of the human experience. It's high amplification of whatever it's dealing with. The reason is because it's been gestating for so long. I think of all the outer planets as with this fishing rod metaphor. The planets closer to the sun are kind of like constantly a very short fishing rod. You throw it out, when you reel it back, it only catches a little bit of algae. Let's say you're fishing in a pond of algae. You throw Venus out there, or Mars. You throw out the fishing rod, and Mars only goes so far and only collects so much algae. And it crystallizes in these patterns, and then it needs to be renewed in the speed that it goes around the Earth, right? Every time Mars transits Uranus in your chart, you're going to have to deal with Mars. But Mars goes around the sun, and it only collects so much algae before it finally comes back And the more algae a planet connects in this fishing rod metaphor, the more slow and gunky it gets. And then when it finally gets there, you wipe off all that algae and it's completely light again. But to the ego, it's like, oh, I just did all of this work. I've built all of this for so long in my past lives, and now God or the divine are swiping it all away from me. Now, when you go Saturn, it's a really far away fishing rod. It gets all this slow, gunky karma, and it's so heavy that it pushes you to move forward, and it will break up eventually, just like everything does with this fishing metaphor. Just that the longer a karma has been sitting with you, the more painful it's going to be to let it go. But also the more desirous of you are to let go of whatever whole karma is being held, right? Uranus is an even further than Saturn. It's this deep, long, gunky bit of algae collecting on this fishing lure that you're pulling back now. It's like, those little red and white bobbers? You're pulling your fishing rod because you launched it out, and now it's coming back. And as it's coming back, it's catching much, 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 much algae. And to let go of all that karma that you've been holding on to, it's so thick and you get so tight in the area relating to it that it's just like, it's like has to explode at some point, change, transform. And you can send that energy positively, very positively, towards positive change in the soul relating to where Uranus is. Again, how you deal with that all depends on the strength, the positive placements of the house Uranus is in, the sign Uranus is in, and the lord of the sign. It doesn't just want to obliterate everything in your life. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The Uranus energy comes in. There's a desire to be whatever you've been holding on to is just so tense with this energy that it's like, I have to let something go in this. Now, if you just live purely by this Uranus thing, everything in astrology is a multi-tiered thing. This wiping out, this transformation can be good, but you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's an old Indian saying that kind of comes from like the Bhagavad Gita, or at least it's an old Indian saying. What it means is that when Uranus energy comes and you have to transform, you have to let go of whatever you've been holding on to relating to Uranus. It's like washing a baby. It's like you have to wash this baby. You have to wash the gunk off of it, and it's painful for the baby because the baby's wiping off this dirt, And when you flush it all away, you don't want to throw that baby out with the bathwater. You want to keep the baby. You want to keep the newborn, the best parts of the baby is the metaphor. You want to keep the best parts of whatever karma you had built up with Uranus. You had a deep, desirous energy to manifest and transform whatever house Uranus is expressing itself through. By house of its placement, as well as the placement of its lord. You want to hold this transformative energy there and let it come through, let the lightning come through, and look for what lessons in a Uranus period or in your whole life relating to the natal placement, look for the lessons that are coming through from you forcing a lot of karma there and then dropping it and letting it go. And then it comes back in your life and there's an opportunity to use that karma again, and then you hold on to it again, and then you let go of it again. This is this constant Uranus thing. And there's something within all of this to be learned. This crazy rhythm of Uranus. Like with a lover, if their 7th or 5th lord is connected to Uranus, you'll keep wanting to stay with them and it feels gross, and then you'll want to take space from them, but then you'll want to come back again, and then you'll want to take space again. And somewhere between all that, you will learn not only something about the rhythm that you want in a partner, possibly they could be your partner. They could give you a deep richness in that part of life, and that's part of your karma with that partner. But I digress. Uranus asks, what's more important in this moment? Ego usefulness now that you think you've been stewing on and just holding on to without really dealing with? or the evolutionary appetites of the spirit. And the longer you hold on to whatever a Uranus transit is shaking up, probably the more painful it's going to be when something topples over. You have to deal with this toppling energy with Uranus. Now, I digress. The spirit is on the center now. The spirit is close to the ground, the surface of the mind. And it shows past life gestation. It shows that you are thinking internally about your soul with wherever Uranus is. Right? And we don't always think about our soul in relation to whatever we're dealing with in our reality. You know, it's like we don't usually have to think about the fact that, oh, maybe in my past lives I've been holding this same thing for so long and I have to deal with it in a new way now. We don't think about that in everything in our reality. Sometimes just going to the market, for some people who have Uranus is nowhere near like Virgo or Gemini or Mercury, then business is just business and we just go along and do what we do. And, you know, like, or if Uranus is nowhere near your 7th house or your 5th or 7th lord or your romance planets, if Uranus is nowhere near there, then your romance is just romance. But wherever Uranus is in your chart, it's going to reflect on the fact that you feel internally like there's an opportunity here to grow in a refreshing way that you never thought would be even that meaningful. But now there's an opportunity there to face it and to deal with this energy, right? Mercury is linear, knows why he knows, took the patient bus, has a memory of the whole journey. And it's through Mercury that you can manage things when Uranus transit comes into your life. You can manage things. You can still see the insight of Uranus, and you can still live your life, especially if you have a strong Mercury. Mercury helps you to deal with tough Uranus transits. But Mercury is limited by attachment to security, to what it has known, and what has shown a linear progression of growth in your life. If you see that, and if your Mercury is working well, then it's like, don't break it, don't fix it if it ain't broke. This part of my life, this part of my business is working well enough. If you have a heavy Uranus placement on your 4th house, and it's like, I don't care about how good my business is doing, I'm going to kill myself because I'm depressed, then that's Uranus energy in the 4th house, which says, sorry, I got to let go of some of this delicious business energy that I've been doing so well with Mercury. I got to let some of it go. But that doesn't mean you let all of Mercury go. That doesn't mean you let everything go for this Uranus transit, although sometimes you will have to. But remember the lessons. And if you have a good Mercury, you will remember the lessons of what you were before Uranus came in and kicked Uranus. Right? Uranus's intuition reached a goal, but don't ask them how they got there. It can't be sustained. Some lesson must eventually recrystallize, or else you're getting this Uranus experience of transformation, and if you don't remember who you were before it, and if you don't think and contemplate consciously on, wow, look how far I've come from the person I was before then when I had that, if you don't feel graceful about the transformation, then Uranus is going to come through, and it's going to be like, wow, I'm glad Uranus is done. You know, like some astrologers will just tell you, yeah, you're in a Uranus period, so just run. Bunker down with some kind of Mercury and some kind of business that's going to, and Saturn. Mercury and Saturn are no matter what, they're your best antidotes for a hard Uranus period, because Mercury grounds your business and manages and can blend. A good Mercury will blend the Uranus insights while still into your reality without letting Uranus completely destroy you. Saturn is the one who will... Saturn's more concerned with the actual sustainment of the energy field, the emotional energy field, and the capacity to feel like you can consciously, consistently grow through the transformative energy of Uranus. Saturn and Mercury are both important to Uranus in this way. So this is like a little thing that I kind of wanted to show here. Again, this is one of those things that you can pause and read for yourself. Essentially what we're getting at here is that a strong Mercury can take one beyond the rational frameworks through Uranus, but bring some kind of intellectual experimentation out of it, to have fun with it and to treat it like this is a part of my life, and to get a sense that like no matter what life throws at you, you can stay and retain, manage things, and talk about it with your friends, communicate with it, and learn that way intellectually. Uranus is about gestation. It's a response to the crystallization of time. So whatever field it's transiting is due for a shakeup. And whatever it visits has grown stagnant, and revolutionary energy must move through it by transit and even in your natal chart. And you'll see how the person experiences the transit. Just give that a read, because this is essentially what I'm going to be talking about when I do my outer planets thing, is how do we quantify Uranus in its sign? What makes a strong house lord so that Uranus's revolutionary energy is within a strong, safe planet that can take the Uranus energy? We're going to be quantifying these soon. This whole video is just to show the usefulness of Mercury in Uranus transits and the usefulness of Saturn, and also how Saturn relates to thinking, as like intuitive thinking, as opposed to Mercury thinking. So I'm going through a lot of these, feel free to visit all of these things in your own mind, in your own time. Pause the video and read these if you feel like it. Saturn commits, Mercury manages. A strong Saturn in the chart signifies that their energy field won't be dramatically weakened, or that they can take the weakening of the energy field when Uranus makes an important transit. Saturn is connected with Uranus in the sense that it wants to progress, and when the person's energy field is weakened for some reason, a good strong Saturn will say, there is something here that is trying to teach me how to grow into moments of this weak energy field, because that's what Uranus does. The shields are down. You can keep up, like Mercury may be able to manage time and to absorb these lessons, but it might not actually have the energy to keep up commitments. When your mother dies because you had Uranus in the 4th house, and Mercury has still got these businesses that it's still kind of rolling with, it might actually like go through it all and not have the Saturn energy to really absorb the spiritual depth of what's going on, to be able to digest the pain of the loss of loved ones, or the loss of a home, or a beloved old picture of what your life used to be. If you don't have a good Saturn, you will be depressed by these things, and you'll lose the energy field needed to be inspired to look at it positively. There's many other things that we need to look at to quantify Uranus and to quantify how a person will get through it. But Saturn's an important one. Weak Saturn means that the person's whole energy kind of field implodes, and they actually are worse for wear. They might learn the lessons through Mercury, talk about them, understand them, but the Saturn here is actually going to be so deeply bugged by being thrown around constantly by the Uranus energy, especially if Uranus is strong in your natal chart. Saturn, if it's weak, will just start to feel escapist and just like kind of start giving up on things when things don't go the right way. A weak Saturn person, Saturn close to Aries, Saturn close to the 1st house, associated with malefic grahas or with its enemies, will feel very bitter about what Uranus throws at it. No matter how well Mercury can take advantage of the evolutionary energy, Saturn will feel bitter about it, will not trust it, and will not learn the spiritual lessons that Uranus is supposed to provide. A A strong Mercury, again, shows that the person can keep up with the lessons, can manage their lives. And a strong Mercury means that they can have resources still in order to actually take advantage of the opportunities of Uranus. When Uranus comes and it's like, hey, I've got the opportunity for you to stop working at this crappy job and to get a new promotion, but that promotion is going to require a lot of work, and for you to go into a completely different state of living. You might have to move around a lot. You might have to think differently about your job, about your career, about your loved ones, anything, or even just like when your wife or your husband or your love partner says that I got a job in a whole nother place and we have to move, or that they change something in themselves which you didn't expect. That's sort of like a Uranus in the 7th vibe. These are the kind of things that can shake you up, and Mercury can have the resources to take advantage of them. Mercury, when Uranus comes through the 7th, if Mercury is strong, Mercury will say, okay, let's communicate about where you need to go spiritually and what it means to us. And we'll see it in fairness. Mercury can communicate to the partner, if you have Uranus in the 7th, communicate clearly with the partner about what has to change in the relationship fairly in order for their transformation energy to come through. A strong Mercury can communicate with their boss or with a therapist or with anybody about when the career changes. If you've got Uranus in the 10th, Mercury can understand it and talk about it and talk about the opportunities that are coming. If it's in the 1st house, one can talk about how I want to be a different person and think of creative ideas about how to do that if the Mercury is strong. With a weak Mercury, even if Saturn upholds the energy field, keeps them committing to things, they're just going to get through the Uranus transit. That's basically what happens. When you've got a strong Saturn, you'll get through it not unscathed, but it'll just be traumatic and annoying, and it's like once it comes through, it's like, God, now I'm finally back to my regular routine programming. And you won't have the opportunity to take advantage of when Uranus represents opportunities, because sometimes Uranus is, you got to see it both ways, in the sense that sometimes a disaster is actually an opportunity to transform your life. And when a disaster strikes, you can look at it as an opportunity to change regarding the field that's causing the deep change, or you can take it as an opportunity to transform things regarding all the changes that are happening around you. Or you can see it as an annoying thing that you just have to get through, right? And in the same way, Uranus also brings actual opportunities, which are disasters in disguise. Again, like the opportunity of Uranus in the 10th, or even Uranus in the 10th reflects on the 4th house axis, right? So if you get an opportunity in your career, it means that you might have to change your living circumstances, your 4th house. And if you don't have a strong 4th lord, you're not going to be able to bring your home, like a crab brings its shell, its home, wherever it goes. If you have a weak 4th house, Uranus is in the 10th house, there's a disaster happening here in regards to your home. But if you have a strong Saturn will get through it, and a strong Mercury will be able to talk about it and speak to it and say intellectually that even though my 4th house is getting destroyed here, there's an opportunity for this career thing and for me to keep up my career. And I have the resources to move. I have the resources. I can manage my financial, fiscal responsibilities. I can manage my new boss with these new communications, and I can intellectualize about the new information, about the new career. And I can transmit the Uranus energies into my life, even though it's taking a hit in all these different ways. If you got a weak Saturn, that 4th house might emotionally destroy you. And even though you're getting these new ideas of the 10th house, you might be completely obliterated, and you might not even be able to hold the energy field for those opportunities. But after it comes through, if you've got a weak Saturn, after Uranus comes through that 10th house, Mercury will have learned a lot about, if your Mercury is strong, you will have learned a lot about that 10th house, right? So a weak Mercury, even if Saturn is strong, it'll get through that tough, with Uranus in the 10th, you go towards this new career, and Saturn will be able to commit to things enough. It's like you're an actor and you go to California, changes the house, and you might have an emotional breakdown being in this new place. If you've got, I'm trying to keep the thread here, if you've got a ill Saturn, you might have an emotional breakdown and it really saps you out. And if your Mercury is weak, not only all that, but you won't have... Sorry, this is what I'm trying to say. If your Saturn is strong and you go out to California to be a movie star, and Saturn is strong, you have emotional toughness because your fourth lord is not strong, right? Saturn can get through it, deal with it, and find some job similar related to where the same thing you did back home. If you're a stagehand, you were an actor and now you're just like a stagehand who's setting up lights, bringing the director coffee, right? This is Saturn saying, this is tough, but I'm still going to survive and commit to something because I have to stay alive. If you got a good, strong Saturn, you will get through it. But after the Uranus energy comes through, you went through the destruction of your fourth house because you changed houses. You saw a lot of intuition come through regarding your 10th house, but Saturn kept you in the same place because you needed to survive. And if you had a weak Mercury, it's like, I came here to California, I came here to learn about this new career, but if I don't have the Mercury, the resources, the intellect, the management capacity, then all of this Saturn staying alive has just got me right back to where I was before. Uranus went through the 10th house and you didn't have the Mercury to understand and communicate with friends and with yourself and in notebooks and in self-contemplation and in a fun way. You didn't have the capacity to try out. Now that you're in California, it's like you're still young enough to try this acting thing. Go and just try different things and, deal with business-wise with this new opportunity that this new place has brought you. Anywhere you deal with Uranus, you want a strong Saturn to move with emotions and employ Saturn. Find simple channels for your energy. It's the best thing to do with any Uranus transit. Find things that are zen. Find a simple job as a waiter in some place to get through it that doesn't zap your nervous system too much, because Uranus is going to be zapping your nervous system whenever it comes through an important house or planet. And it's like Tantra. Don't let energy swell explosively into a spiritual ejaculation where it's like, I have to throw away everything and it's this bad ecstasy and it's so awful. Ground yourself. But do be led by the ecstatic energy. And contemplate and self-contemplate all the while. Also, don't repress the memory of where you've been, where you're going, and insightfully look at opportunities coming forward consciously through Mercury, through planning, through scientific reason, through rational analysis. Because Mercury is what really grounds the lessons of Uranus. Saturn grounds the energy of Uranus. Mercury grounds the lessons of Uranus. And, same kind of thing. Keep necessary commitments while introducing new opportunities. It's our, when opportunities come, be discerning. Stick to some commitments, but Mercury ought to know when to play the field so that you're just sticking to the same thing, but you've got a progressive energy and an intellectual energy and the resources to go forward with what the Uranus is trying to teach you about your sun, about your spirit, about the pressures of the evolutionary appetites in the soul. Mercury is the one that introduces new opportunities. Saturn is the one that's just okay with letting this energy come through, dealing with the emotions that come through consciously, seeing them as a tool for growth, seeing all opportunities as a tool for growth. That's what makes Saturn the planet of greatness. So think about the symbols of Saturn when you're trying to deal with Uranus energy. Think about the symbol of what Saturn is, what it means. Think about Saturn in your own chart and how you can use your own Saturn no matter where it is, even if it's ill placed. You can use Saturn to help you get through it, but also think about where Saturn is exalted from the sense of your chart. You know, if you're like a Leo rising, Saturn is exalted in Libra. So you could think about how Libra things, because Libra is Saturn's exaltation, think about how Libra things and third house things for a Leo rising reflect on what you can do to capitalize on Saturn's commitment patterns, on Saturn's ability to endure. If you want to know more about that whole vibe, Ryan Kirksack's got a whole series about what each planet means to the ascendant and where they're exalted and these sorts of things. But I digress. Ladies and gentlemen, as usual, this was supposed to be a brief synopsis of the symbolism of Uranus. Turned out to be a long one, but you know, that's just how it goes here on my show sometimes. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. My name is Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. This was the symbolism of Uranus, what it means, how its energy kind of plays out, and how Uranus relates to Mercury's thinking and to Saturn's progressive endurance, right? And how all of these themes are important in order to get the most out of Uranus, and in order to get the most out of ecstatic moments where the sun in you, the Atma, the evolutionary appetites of the soul, are on the surface of your reality. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Let me know if you guys have any other ideas for cool new videos and stuff like that, because I'm always doing these things. Trying to build on our astrological community full of people from different cultures and perspectives, trying to get a sense of a cross-cultural vantage point of what it means to be an astrologer, what it means to contemplate these symbols, what it means to experience these symbols in the chart. I like to cross-reference cultural vantages. I like to bring the Vedic astrology and the Western astrology together. I encourage more of our astrologers to do that, and I'd like to know what you guys think about it. Always feel free. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology, like I said. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video that I decide to do. And in this case, in this series, it'll probably be specifically about all the outer planets and how to interpret them in a Vedic astrology sense of the tropical horoscope. Thank you for watching.